The station was older than memory. It floated in the darkness near a dead star, a place where light had stopped shining a billion years ago. The Galactic Assembly met here because no one owned this place. No empire could claim it. It belonged to the void, and the void belonged to everyone. 12 species had sent their leaders to this meeting. They sat in a great circular chamber, each delegation behind curved desks made of metals that did not exist on most worlds. The air was cold and carried the smell of recycled oxygen. Screens floated in the darkness above them, showing maps and data and the blue marble of a small planet called Earth. The delegate stood at the center of the chamber. His name was, and he was tall and covered in dark green scales. His eyes were yellow with black slits, and when he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. The humans have discovered faster-than-light travel, said. They are weak. They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. Their planet is rich in water and metals. I ask the Assembly to grant the Dominion of the rights to conquer this world. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates nodded, others looked uncertain. The ambassador, a creature covered in silver fur, raised her hand. The humans have nuclear weapons, she said. They have destroyed their own cities with them. They are violent. Laughed, the sound was harsh and cold. They are violent toward each other. That makes them weak, not strong. They cannot even unite their own planet. They will fall in weeks. The debate continued for 2 hours. Some empires wanted to wait and watch the humans. Others agreed with. The humans were primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were simple. Taking their world would be easy and the resources would be valuable. The vote was about to begin when the lights in the chamber flickered. Every delegate fell silent. The temperature dropped. Something was coming, something that made even the oldest ambassadors feel small and afraid. A shape appeared in the center of the room. It had no solid form. It was made of light and shadow, constantly shifting like smoke given life. It was the Wanderer, the oldest being in the known galaxy. No one knew where the Wanderer came from. No one knew what it truly was. Some said it was the last survivor of the first civilization, born when the universe was young. Others said it was something stranger, something that existed outside normal space and time. It spoke perhaps once in a million years, and when it spoke, wise beings listened. "Do not touch Earth," the Wanderer said. Its voice was like wind through ancient trees, soft but impossible to ignore. "I have watched that world since life first stirred in its oceans. I have seen what grows there. I have seen what sleeps in their blood. Turn away. Find another world. Leave the humans alone." Stared at the shifting form. Fear flickered in his yellow eyes, but pride was stronger. They had conquered 40 worlds. They had never lost a war. "Why?" asked. "What is so special about these humans? They are small and soft. They have no defenses." The Wanderer was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy with something that might have been sadness. "They have survived everything," it said. "Ice ages that froze their world, predators larger than your warriors, diseases that killed most of their kind, and they survived each other. They have spent their entire existence learning to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. That knowledge is written in their bones. It is part of what they are." "Stories," said. "Old stories about primitives. They have never faced a real enemy. They have never faced us." "I am 11 billion years old," the Wanderer said. "I have watched empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. I have seen species achieve godhood and others fade to nothing. The humans are different. There is something in them that does not exist in other species. They call it many things: will, spite, stubbornness. It does not matter what name you give it. What matters is that it cannot be broken, not by pain, not by fear, not by death itself." The Wanderer began to fade, its form growing thin and transparent. "I have given my warning," it said. "What you do with it is your choice, but remember my words when the fires begin to burn." Then it was gone, and the chamber was silent. Looked around at the other delegates. Some looked worried. The ambassador was whispering to her aides, but most of the assembly looked doubtful. The Wanderer was ancient, yes, but perhaps too ancient. Perhaps its long existence had made it cautious beyond reason. The Wanderer means well, said carefully, but it has not fought a war in eons. It does not understand modern weapons and modern tactics. The humans are nothing. They will fall like all the others. The vote was called. 8 species voted in favor of conquest, 3 voted against, 1 abstained. The dominion of was granted the rights to Earth. Far across the galaxy, on the small blue planet that had just been marked for death, a woman named sat in her apartment in the city of. She was 32 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. She worked as a marine biologist, studying the creatures of the deep ocean. Tonight she could not sleep. She stood by her window, looking up at the stars. They seemed so far away, so peaceful. She did not know that somewhere out there, beings with yellow eyes and green scales were preparing ships to come and take everything she had ever known. She did not know that her world was about to change forever. But somewhere deep inside her, in a part of her mind she could not name, something stirred. It was the same thing that had stirred in her ancestors when the ice came, when the predators hunted them, when other tribes came with weapons and fire. It was the thing that had kept her species alive through countless disasters. It was waiting. It had always been waiting. And soon, very soon, it would wake up. The armada came out of darkness like a swarm of metal insects. 300 warships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They moved past Mars without slowing down. They ignored the small human stations on the moon. They had one target and they would not stop until they reached it. Earth saw them coming. Satellites detected the ships when they were still 2 days away. The news spread across the planet in minutes. Every screen, every phone, every radio carried the same message. We are not alone, and whatever is coming does not look friendly. Panic came first. People ran through streets, crying and screaming. Churches filled with prayers. Stores were emptied as people grabbed food and water. Governments called emergency meetings that lasted through the night. But then something changed. It started small. A factory owner in Germany looked at his workers and said, "If they want to fight, let us give them one." A grandmother in Brazil loaded her old hunting rifle and sat on her porch, watching the sky. A teenager in Japan stopped crying, wiped her eyes, and asked her father to teach her how to fight. The panic did not disappear, but something else grew beside it, something harder. When the Armada reached Earth orbit, they sent their message. It was translated into every human language and broadcast on every channel. People of Earth, we are the dominion of, your planet now belongs to us. You have 72 hours to surrender. If you do not, we will destroy your cities one by one until nothing remains. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. Earth's unified government was only 10 years old. It was weak and full of arguments. But that day, every nation agreed on one thing. They would send a response. A small diplomat ship launched from a base in Korea. It carried only 2 people. The first was a man of 45 with gray in his short hair and scars on his hands. He had been a soldier for 20 years before becoming an ambassador. He knew what war looked like. He knew what it cost. The second was his aide. She was 28, with quick eyes and a mind that worked faster than most computers. In the 3 months since humanity discovered alien life existed, she had learned 8 alien languages. She would be the one to make sure they understood exactly what humans had to say. Their ship was tiny next to the flagship. It looked like a fish swimming up to a whale, but did not let his fear show as he walked into the meeting chamber. Was waiting for him. The commander sat on a throne of black metal, surrounded by warriors in armor that gleamed like oil. He looked at the way a cat looks at a mouse. "You are the one they sent?" asked. "One small man with no weapons. Your people must be very foolish." "Stood straight. I am here to talk. That is what civilized beings do." Laughed, and his warriors laughed with him. The sound echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "There is nothing to talk about," said. "Surrender or die, those are your choices." Stepped forward, she spoke in the language, her pronunciation perfect. "We choose neither. We ask for peace between our peoples. We have much to offer. We can trade. We can share knowledge. There is no need for war." For a moment looked surprised. Then his eyes narrowed with anger. "You speak our language," he said. "How?" "We learned," said simply. Leaned forward on his throne. "You learned our language in 3 months. That is impossible. Our children take years to master it." Did not answer. She did not need to. The truth was written on his face. He had expected to find stupid animals on this planet. He was beginning to realize his mistake. But pride is a powerful thing. Waved his clawed hand. "It does not matter," he said. "Clever words will not save you. 72 hours, then we begin." And returned to Earth. They told the government what happened, and the government told the people. What happened next confused the observers in orbit. They expected panic to get worse. They expected governments to collapse. They expected humans to turn on each other. Instead, Earth mobilized. Factories that made cars started making weapons. Universities turned their research toward military technology. Young people lined up to join the military. Old soldiers came out of retirement. Everyone who could work, worked. Everyone who could fight, trained to fight. On hour 71, a scouting ship landed near a small fishing village on the Korean coast. 10 soldiers came out, looking for humans to capture and study. They found. He was 63 years old. He had been a fisherman all his life. His hands were rough from nets and salt water. When the soldiers walked into his village, he was sitting outside his house, mending a fishing net. He looked up at the armored aliens. They were twice his size. They had claws that could cut through metal. They had weapons that could burn through stone. Picked up his harpoon. "You are not welcome here," he said. The soldiers laughed. One of them reached for him. Moved faster than any of them expected. The harpoon went through the gap in the soldier's armor, right into his throat. The alien fell, choking on his own blood. Then the village came alive. 30 people, armed with harpoons, kitchen knives, fishing hooks, and one antique rifle that had belonged to someone's grandfather. They attacked the soldiers with a fury that made no sense to the aliens. 9 soldiers died in that village. 9 armored warriors, killed by fishermen and farmers and grandmothers. The last survivor fled back to his ship and reported what happened. Watched the footage in silence. He saw old men fighting with knives against plasma rifles. He saw women throwing themselves at enemies 3 times their size. He saw a child, no more than 12, bite a soldier's hand so hard she drew blood through his scales. For the first time in 200 years of warfare, felt doubt. "What are these creatures?" he whispered. No one had an answer. The 72 hours ended. The war began. And Earth was ready. The bombs fell on the first day. Warships rained fire on Earth cities and millions died in the flames. Seoul burned. Tokyo burned. New York and London and Cairo burned. The sky turned black with smoke and the screams of the dying rose up to the stars. The human fleet rose to meet the enemy. 100 ships against 300. Old ships, slow ships, ships that had been built for exploration and trade, now armed with whatever weapons could be found. It was not a fair fight. Everyone knew it would not be a fair fight. Captain commanded the Defiance, a destroyer that had been built 20 years ago. His crew was young and scared. His weapons were weak compared to guns. His shields could barely stop their smallest weapons. But had something that did not understand. He had nothing left to lose. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships fell like leaves in autumn. The Defiance took hit after hit, its hull breaking apart, its engines dying. Half of its crew was dead. The other half was wounded. A carrier moved in to finish them off. It was massive, carrying 4,000 soldiers waiting to land on Earth. Looked at what was left of his ship. He looked at the carrier growing larger in his screen. He made his choice. "All hands," he said into the speaker, his voice calm and steady. "This is the captain. We're going to ram that carrier. Anyone who wants to leave, get to the escape pods now. No shame in it. You've all done enough." No one left. Smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was pride in it. "Then let's give them something to remember." The Defiance accelerated. Its broken engine screamed with the effort. Guns fired again and again, but the ship would not stop. It would not turn. It kept coming like a bullet aimed at the enemy's heart. The carrier tried to move, but it was too slow, too big. The Defiance hit its engine core at full speed. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a small sun. The carrier broke apart, and 4,000 soldiers died in the fire. His last transmission reached Earth before the explosion took him. "Tell my daughter I went down swinging." On the surface, the invasion had begun. Soldiers landed in cities all over the world. They expected broken people, ready to surrender. They found something else. In Seoul, a young woman named watched the alien ships land from her university window. She was 22 years old, studying history. She had never held a weapon in her life. 3 hours later, she was leading a group of students through the subway tunnels, carrying guns taken from dead soldiers and bombs made from chemistry lab supplies. They had better weapons. They had armor and training and numbers, but the humans had something else. They had knowledge of every street, every building, every tunnel. They had rage that burned hotter than plasma, and they had stubbornness that refused to accept defeat. For every resistance cell they destroyed, 3 more appeared. They fought in the ruins of cities. They fought in forests and mountains and deserts. They fought in ways that made no sense to the aliens. An officer reported back to after one battle. His voice was shaking. "They do not retreat," he said. "We killed 80% of their unit and the rest kept fighting. They knew they would die and they kept fighting anyway. One of them was missing an arm and she was still shooting at us with her other hand. What kind of creatures are these?" Had no answer. Weeks passed, then months. The war that was supposed to last 3 weeks entered its 4th month, then its 5th, then its 6th. They were winning. They held most of Earth's surface. They had destroyed most of humanity's fleet. They had killed hundreds of millions of people. But they were also dying. Not in large battles, but in small ones, in ambushes and traps and suicide attacks. Every day more soldiers died. Every day more supplies were destroyed. Every day the cost of this war grew higher. And the humans kept learning. In the 3rd month, they figured out how to jam communications. In the 4th month, they captured a tank and learned how to use it. In the 5th month, the marine biologist who had once watched the stars from her window led a team that cracked the secret of shield technology. She had spent her life studying how creatures survive in the deep ocean. Now, she used that knowledge to find weaknesses in alien armor. The shields that protected soldiers were designed to stop energy weapons. They were not designed to stop simple metal bullets moving at high speed. When she shared this discovery, the tide of the war began to turn. The commanders held a meeting. They looked at maps covered in red marks showing lost units. They looked at supply reports that showed shortages of everything. They looked at each other with tired eyes. "This was supposed to be easy," one general said. "They were supposed to be primitives. Why won't they surrender?" Another general shook his head. "I have fought 12 wars. I have conquered 6 worlds. I have never seen anything like this. They are not fighting to win. They are fighting to hurt us. Even if they lose, they want to make sure we bleed." Sat in silence, staring at the reports. His scales had lost their shine. His eyes had lost their fire. The easy victory he had promised was gone. In its place was a nightmare that would not end. "What have we awakened?" he whispered. 8 months into the war, the Empire began to crack, not on Earth but at home. The cost of the war was destroying their economy. Other species, seeing the struggle, began to push back against their rule. Rebellions started on conquered worlds. And still on Earth, the humans kept fighting. They would not stop. They did not know how to stop. And they were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. The Galactic Assembly watched the war with growing fear. Every week, new reports arrived from Earth. Every week, the reports grew worse for the. It should have been impossible. The humans had no fleet left. Their cities were ruins. Their population had been cut in half. By every measure that the Assembly understood, they should have surrendered months ago. But they did not surrender. They kept fighting. And somehow, impossibly, they were starting to win. Stood in an underground laboratory, surrounded by screens showing alien technology. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Her hands shook from too much coffee. But her mind was sharp, sharper than it had ever been. The shield frequency changes every 6 seconds, she told her team. But it follows a pattern. If we time our shots right, we can punch through every time. She had been a marine biologist. She had studied jellyfish and whales and creatures that lived in darkness where no light reached. Now she studied alien weapons and armor and ships. The skills were not as different as people might think. Both required patience. Both required the ability to find patterns in chaos. Her discoveries had saved thousands of lives. Her new weapons had killed thousands of enemies. She did not know how to feel about that. She only knew that she could not stop, not until it was over. In another part of the underground base, sat in front of a communication screen. Messages scrolled past her eyes, thousands of them every hour. She had learned to read them as easily as her native Korean. "They're scared," she told who stood behind her. "Their generals are fighting with each other. Their soldiers are refusing to go on patrol. They call us monsters now. Did you know that? They have a new word for us. It means something like the ones who will not die." Nodded slowly. He had aged 10 years in the past 8 months. His hair was now completely gray. His face was lined with scars from battles and stress. "Good," he said. "Let them be scared. Fear is a weapon too." The humans had learned this early in the war. They could not match thee in ships or guns or numbers, but they could match them in fear. They could make thee afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to walk down any street. They painted symbols on the walls of ruined buildings, symbols that meant nothing but looked threatening. The soldiers became convinced they were curses or warnings. They broadcast music into ships, human music, loud and aggressive, with words they could not understand. The aliens did not know what the songs meant, but the sounds made them nervous, made them feel like prey being hunted. They left messages for the enemy to find, messages that said things like, "We know where you sleep, and your children will hear stories about what we did to you." None of it was true. It was all lies and tricks, but they did not know that, and their fear grew with every passing day. A general named led his division into battle against a human resistance group in the mountains. He had 3,000 soldiers. The humans had 300. When the battle was over, was the only survivor on either side. He walked back to his base alone, his armor covered in blood, his eyes empty and dead. When asked what happened, he could only say one thing. "They smiled. While they were dying, they smiled at us, as if they knew something we did not, as if death was a joke we did not understand." The assembly held an emergency meeting. Delegates who had voted for the conquest of Earth now demanded that something be done. They were supposed to be strong. They were supposed to win easily. Instead, they were being destroyed by creatures that should have been helpless. Then the Wanderer appeared. The ancient being drifted into the chamber like a cloud of stars. Every delegate fell silent. Every eye turned to the shifting form. "I warned you," the Wanderer said. Its voice was heavy with something that might have been sorrow. "Now you see what I saw. Now you understand what sleeps in their blood." The ambassador spoke up. "What are they? How can they fight like this? They have no natural weapons. They have no special abilities. How?" The wanderer was silent for a long moment. "Do you know what made humans what they are?" it finally asked. "It was not strength. It was not speed. It was not intelligence, though they have that too. It was something simpler. It was memory." The delegates looked confused. The wanderer continued. "Every other species in this galaxy, when they face extinction, they either survive or they die. They move on, they forget. But humans remember. They remember every ice age, every plague, every predator, every war. They carry the memory of extinction in their blood, passed down from parent to child for millions of years, and that memory has shaped them into something unique." The wanderer's form flickered with strange light. "They do not fear death the way you do. They have stood at the edge of extinction so many times that death has become familiar to them. An old enemy, almost a friend. They do not fight to survive. They fight because fighting is what they are. It is written in every cell of their bodies. They would rather burn than bend. They would rather end than surrender." His face appeared on a screen. He looked broken. His scales were dull, his eyes hollow. "Please," he said, "tell us how to stop them. Tell us how to make peace." The wanderer turned to face him. "There is only one way," it said. "Stop fighting. Leave their world. Never return. Pray that they are merciful enough to let you go." "And if they are not merciful?" asked. The wanderer did not answer. It did not need to. Everyone in the chamber already knew. The humans would chase thee across the galaxy if they had to. They would hunt them for 1,000 years. They would never stop, never forgive, never forget. Because that was what humans did. That was what they had always done. And the galaxy was only now beginning to understand the truth of it. The war ended on a cold morning in November, 1 year after it began. Stood in the ruins of Seoul, watching the last transport ships rise into the gray sky. She was 23 years old now. Her face was thin and hard, marked by scars that would never fully heal. Her eyes had the look of someone who had seen too much death. Around her stood what was left of her resistance unit, 12 people out of the 200 she had started with. They watched the ships leave in silence. No one cheered. No one smiled. They had won, but victory felt hollow when it was built on so many graves. The empire had collapsed, not just on Earth but everywhere. The war had drained their resources, broken their military, and shattered the fear that had kept their conquered worlds obedient. Rebellion spread across their territory like fire through dry grass. Within 6 months, the empire that had ruled 40 worlds would be gone. Was dead. He had taken his own life 3 days before the surrender, unable to face the shame of defeat. His last message to his people was simple: "We were wrong. We should have listened." But his death changed nothing. The damage was done. Billions were dead on both sides. Cities were ruins. Economies were shattered. The scars of this war would take generations to heal. Returned to her apartment inn, or what was left of it. The building still stood, but the windows were broken and the walls were scorched. She walked through the rooms she had once known so well, touching objects that seemed to belong to another life. Her research had helped turn the tide of the war. Her weapons had killed countless enemies. She was called a hero now, but she did not feel like a hero. She felt tired, so very tired. She stood by the window where she had once watched the stars. The same stars that had seemed so peaceful, so far away. Now she knew what was out there. Now she knew that the universe was full of creatures who would kill without mercy. And she knew that she would spend the rest of her life making sure humanity was ready for them. Stood before the Galactic Assembly. Behind him, visible through the great windows of the chamber, floated a human fleet. It was small compared to the great navies of the older empires, but it was enough to make every delegate nervous. These ships were not the weak vessels that had faced a year ago. They were new. They were armed with weapons that combined human creativity with alien technology. They were crewed by soldiers who had survived the worst war in human history. "You came to conquer us," said. His voice was calm and steady, but there was steel underneath. "You thought we were weak. You thought we were primitive. You thought wrong." He paused, looking around at the delegates. Many of them could not meet his eyes. "We did not want this war. We did not ask for it. We were happy on our little blue world, looking up at the stars and dreaming of peace. You took that from us. You killed billions of our people. You burned our cities. You tried to break us." His voice grew harder. "You failed. We are still here. And we are not the same species you attacked a year ago. We have learned. We have grown. We have become something new." Stepped forward, carrying a document. She handed it to the assembly's leader, an ancient being from a species so old they had forgotten their own. "This is our demand," said. "Full membership in the Galactic Assembly, recognition of our territory, and a promise that no empire will ever attack Earth again." The leader looked at the document. Then he looked at the human fleet through the window. Then he looked at. "And if we refuse?" he asked. Smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Then we will take what we want anyway, and we will remember who stood against us." The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted everything it asked for. No one wanted to be the next. In the shadows of the chamber, the Wanderer watched. Its ancient consciousness flickered with something that might have been satisfaction. It had seen many species rise and fall over 11 billion years. It had watched civilizations build wonders and then crumble to dust. It had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. But it had never seen anything quite like humans. They were young. They were crude. They were violent in ways that made even the Wanderer uncomfortable. But they had something that no other species possessed, a spark that refused to go out, a fire that burned brighter the more you tried to smother it. The Wanderer knew things that the younger races did not. It knew that the universe was darker and more dangerous than anyone imagined. It knew about the things that lurked in the spaces between galaxies, waiting. Things that had destroyed civilizations far older and more powerful than anything in the current assembly. Those things were coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And when they arrived, the galaxy would need warriors who did not know how to surrender. The Wanderer drifted closer to where stood, though the human could not see it. "At last," it whispered, its voice too soft for anyone to hear. "A species that might survive what is coming, a species that does not know how to stay dead." On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Cities were rebuilt. Children were born. People learned to laugh again, though their laughter had an edge to it now. Went back to university. She finished her history degree and began teaching. She told her students about the war, about what it cost, about what it meant. She wanted them to remember. She wanted them to be ready. Because she knew, deep in her bones, that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Humanity had entered the galaxy as prey. They had emerged as something else entirely, something that made older species nervous, something that made ancient beings pay attention. The stars had tried to break them. The stars had failed. And now, for the first time, the stars were afraid. In her rebuilt apartment, stood by her window once more. She looked up at the night sky, at the countless points of light scattered across the darkness. She thought about the Wanderer's warning. She thought about what might be coming. She was not afraid. She was human. And humans did not know how to be afraid. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. They only knew how to fight. And they would keep fighting until the last star went dark.